All right. Well, welcome everybody to this live lesson. Today what we're going to be talking about is classification and diversity, which is a lot of your information from lesson 601 for biology. Now, we're going to start off by learning the different classification ways. There are two major ways on how you can classify organisms in biology. One is based on physical similarities. That's a big part. If you organize them based on the way they look physically, then you get into the Linnaean classification system. And that was he developed the scientific naming system that we still use today. It's one of the oldest classification methods we have. And taxonomy is the science behind it. So like heredity is the science behind genetics. Well, taxonomy is the science behind classifying things. A taxon is just simply a group of organisms in a classification system, which we'll talk about next. So first of all, Linnaean or Linnaeus developed this Linnaean classification system. It's based on physical characteristics. Taxonomy is the name of the science, and taxons are the name of the groups of organisms. How it is named is the binomial nomenclature. This is what binomial nomenclature means. BI is two, so it's a two-name naming system. That's what binomial nomenclature means. It uses the Latin words to describe it, so nobody has an argument about what language to use. We use the dead language. And the scientific names are always written in italics. So that's the font that you write it in. And the two parts are the genus and species. Does anybody know the genus and species for humans? Anybody want to type the name of, or guess what the genus and species are for humans? Nobody? Very good, Noah. That is our genus and species name. To separate it out, we are this genus Homo and the species Sapien. Oops. That is our genus and species name. The genus should be capitalized. The species should be lowercase, so I should have made a lowercase s there. But anyways, genus is capitalized, species is lowercase. A genus includes one or more physically similar species. Species in the same genus are thought to be closely related. Genus is always capitalized as well. So if you share the same genus with somebody or some other organism, that means you're very closely related. A species descriptor is the second part of the scientific name. That's always lowercase, always follows the genus name, and is never written alone. So here is a certain type of owl called Tyto alba. And this is for participation. Which word is the genus and which word is the species for that owl? So which word is the genus and which word is the species for that owl, Tyto alba? Good job, Noah and Catlin. Talea, yep, Tyto is the genus, alba is the species. Genus is first, it's capitalized. Alba is the species, which is always lowercase and written second. Good job. Scientific names help scientists to communicate. Some species have very similar common names. For example, I know we've heard of them before. They look like the little pill bugs, or sometimes they're called roly-polies, or sometimes they're called sow bugs, or sometimes they're called potato bugs, right? We've seen those before under rocks. Well, people can get confused based on what you call them. They have like 4 or 5 names. So that's why it's important to use the scientific name Armadillidium vulgare. So that is the actual scientific name for that bug. Or mountain lion. Some people call it a mountain lion. Some people call it a cougar. Some people call it a puma. Well, you can all be technically right, but the current and specific scientific name is Puma concolor. So you'd actually be more accurate if you called it a puma. So the point of this and me showing you this is that we can have many different names for the same animal. But if you look at the scientific name, that will give you the exact answer, genus and species, of what that species is. And here is its classification system. This is something that every one of you need to memorize. Absolutely memorize this in biology. And there are several different ways that you can memorize it. But each level is included in the level above it. Levels get increasingly specific from kingdom to species. So it gets very specific from kingdom to species. Look how many different animals are in the same kingdom, Animalia, like a ton. But then when you get down to the genus Canis, there's only 4 left. Canis lupus, that's just this certain species of wolf. So again, you need to memorize the order of the 7 levels. It goes kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Or it could go in that order or vice versa. But I like to talk about most broad to most specific. Does anybody know a mnemonic on how they can memorize this? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. One that stuck into my mind for a while is kings play chess on fat green stools. That's a good mnemonic to memorize. Does anybody else have a mnemonic they want to make up or share? But either way, if you want to share that, that's great. But either way, you want to memorize that. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. From most broad to most specific, that's the order of the Linnaean classification system. Will you see that on the test? Definitely. Will you see it on the EOC? Definitely. So it's something you need to memorize on how biology organizes their animals. So you can use kings play chess on fat green stools. Somebody else last year had a really good one. I forget it though. But there are other mnemonics that you can memorize that. But that's something you definitely want to memorize for sure. And you should know that most broad is the kingdom to most specific is the species. And we name our animals based on the genus and species, the 2 bottom things. Good job, Cameron. Haven't heard of that one yet, but I like it. Kittens play chess on flying gray saucers. Very good. However you guys want to memorize it, that works with me. Okay, so the Linnaean classification system does have limitations, though. It does not account for molecular evidence, which is DNA. Linnaeus, when he was alive, nobody on Earth knew about DNA. Nobody did. So DNA is not included in this classification system. They just group them together based on how they look, physical similarities. The technology just didn't exist. But we still use this system today, so it's obviously not that bad. But the only bad thing about the Linnaean classification system, it does not account for how closely things are related based on their DNA. The other one does. So this gets into the second way to classify organisms. Physical similarities are not always the result of close relationships. Genetic similarities more accurately show evolutionary relationships. So this new system on classifying organisms bases it on evolution and bases it on genetics. So this is more accurate, but both systems work. So don't think one is better than the other. They both work, they just organize it differently. So again, this next way is based off of evolutionary relationships, not physical similarities like the Linnaean one, but this one's evolutionary. And this one is called phylogeny. Phylogeny is the evolutionary history for a group of species. Evidence from living species, they get it from that, they get it from the fossil record, they get it from DNA, and it's all shown using branching tree diagrams called cladograms. So this is the other way on how they can organize animals based on their evolution. And it's based on data from the fossil records, DNA, and other living species. Cladistics is the common method to make that evolutionary tree. It's classification based on common ancestry. If species are placed in order, then they descended from a common ancestor. So where do you think the common ancestor is? Would it be A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, or 4? What area do you think your common ancestor is going to exist? Yeah, it's going to exist at 1 or below 1. Yeah, closest to 1 though, for sure. So your common ancestor is going to be at the bottom. And then where it branches off to form new organisms. New organism A, new organism B, C, D. So we'll get into what those are. Okay? The cladogram is an evolutionary tree made using cladistics. A clade is a group of species that shares a common ancestor. So this is a clade. It's a group of species, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that share one common ancestor, which would be right here. Each species in a clade has traits that have changed. So traits change to form these new 5 species. They all came from the common ancestor, but each species in a clade has traits that have changed. Derived characters are traits shared in different degrees by clade members. So here's a clade right here. And here's the derived character that made them separate. Here's another clade here. And here's the derived character that made it separate. Here's a third clade here, Reptilia. And here's the derived character that made it separate. Here's a fourth clade here, looks like snakes and lizards. And here's their derived character that made them separate. And then the last clade, which includes birds and bigger reptiles, well, here's the derived characters that separated them out. Your common ancestor is down here at the bottom. So clades are similar groups of animals, and they get separated from derived characters that make them different than the rest. So if you know what a clade is, a group of similar animals in a cladogram. If you know what a derived character is, that's the fact that separates them from the rest. And if you know where the common ancestor is, that's really the main stuff you need to know for the cladistics and the cladogram. Know what a clade is, know where the common ancestor is, and know what derived characters are and why they eventually lead to separating new species out. Nodes represent the most recent common ancestor. Clades can be identified by snipping a branch under a node. We already knew that. So again, derived characters are these things here that separate the species into clades. And the clades are the group of animals that you see in purple or blue or yellow or green or pink. And the nodes are your common ancestors for each thing. So each node, which is these areas where they connect, those are just other common ancestors that evolved over time. Your oldest common ancestor is at the bottom. Your most recent common ancestor is right here that separates the last two clades. So as long as you know what a clade is, that's a group of organisms, similar. As long as you know where the common ancestors are at the very bottom or at the nodes, and as long as you know what derived characters are, which are the facts that separate the clades out, that's all you need to know for cladograms. Okay? Also, we need to understand that classification is always a work in progress. It's always changing. Look at 1866. Until 1866, there were only two kingdoms. That's about 150 years ago. Every single kingdom was either animal or plant. That's it. And in 1866, though, more discoveries, more information came to the table. So now they invented Protista. So animal was first, plants were second. Well, they kind of came first and first, but you know what I mean. Then Protista was discovered for Protus. Then in 1938, less than 100 years ago, prokaryotes moved to the kingdom Monera. Then in 1959, you have Archaea and fungi coming out in 1959. And then in 1977, that was only about 40 years ago, kingdom Monera split into two kingdoms, bacteria and Archaea. So fungi came fourth, and then these two got separated out, you know, fifth and sixth. So today, and for the last 40 years, we've had the same six animal kingdoms, or sorry, the same six kingdoms of life. Those are animal, plant, protus, fungus, bacteria, Archaea. In terms of most in terms of least to most adapted or complex, it would go Archaea, bacteria, protus, fungus, plant, animal. So it just depends on how you want to organize it, but those are the six kingdoms of life. Will there be more or less in the future? Maybe, because science is always changing, always. So this is not set in stone forever, but currently there are six kingdoms. Even bigger than kingdoms, and I know I'm throwing a curveball here, but there are, even bigger than kingdoms, there are domains. So if you really want to organize it, it should say domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Domain should be the biggest. We know there's six kingdoms, but there are only three domains. There's domain bacteria, which is kingdom bacteria. There is domain Archaea, which happens to be kingdom Archaea. And then there's domain Eukarya, which includes protus, plants, fungus, and animals. So remember, there are six kingdoms: bacteria, Archaea, protus, fungus, plant, animal, but there are only three domains: bacteria, Archaea, and Eukarya, which is actually even more broad than kingdoms. So if you really want to organize it correctly, it should go domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's the correct order on how to classify all living things. Okay, So this is just kind of getting into what we're going to be learning about next week. But domain bacteria includes prokaryotes in the kingdom bacteria. Remember? Domain bacteria, kingdom bacteria. They're the same thing. One of the largest groups on Earth, and they're classified by their shape, their need for oxygen, and the diseases they can cause. That's how they organize bacteria. Archaea is the other one. That includes prokaryotes in the kingdom Archaea, right? So you got domain bacteria, kingdom bacteria. Domain Archaea, kingdom Archaea. These are the weirdest of all the single-celled organisms. Their cell walls are chemically different from bacteria. That's why they're different in a different kingdom. Their differences are discovered by studying their RNA, not their DNA, but their RNA, and they all are known for living in extreme environments. If you want to go find an Archaea, go to the bottom of an ocean floor sea vent spewing up hot liquid from the bottom of the ocean, or go into a volcano, or go somewhere where it's extremely salty or acidic, you might find Archaea. Everywhere else on Earth, you'll find bacteria. So they're similar, but their own two domains and kingdoms, bacteria and Archaea. Both single-celled. Domain bacteria is more normal. Archaea is your extreme environment bacteria. And then domain Eukarya is all the eukaryotes. So remember, here's domain Eukarya. So it all includes things that are made up of the eukaryotic cell. So that would be, obviously, protists, plants, fungus, animals, which we will be talking about next week. So that marks the end, guys, of today's live lesson. I just have 2 or 3 follow-up questions for you guys to type in the box to make sure you get your attendance credit for today. First of all, what are the names of the 2 ways that organisms can be classified? There's 2 different ways. What are those 2 ways? So what are the 2 ways? Physical relationships and genetic relationships. Good. Okay. Also remember, the physical way is called the Linnaean taxonomy chart. The genetic relationships, or the evolutionary relationships, is called cladistics, or the cladogram, or phylogeny. Yep. Taxonomy is the physical similarities. Phylogeny is the evolution genetic similarities. Good. So there's 2 ways to do it. Can anybody tell me the order of the Linnaean or taxonomy chart? What's the order from most broad to most specific? Who can do it? Who remembers it? You can use any mnemonic or any way you want to memorize it, or you can use Cameron's mnemonic. Either way. Close, Catlin. You got kingdom, phylum. Yep, Stephen, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Clade, you're just missing the letter C, K-P-C-O-F-T-S. Yeah, you got the basics of it. Just don't forget that, guys. That's something we need to memorize. All of us need to memorize that. It's right here. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. But if you want to be even crazier, you can say domain. Yeah. So this is a domain up top. Domain. Okay. So domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's technically the right way to do it. How many kingdoms are there in the world? How many how many kingdoms? 6. Yep, there should be 6. Archaea, bacteria, protists, fungus, plant, animal. How many domains are there in the world? 3. Yep. Bacteria, Archaea, and Eukarya, which we mentioned right there. And then for the last question, what's the difference between bacteria and Archaea? They're both their own domain and kingdom, but what's the difference between bacteria and Archaea? Good. That's one big difference there, Stephen. Good. Even more important, Talea. Good work. Archaea live in extreme environments. Bacteria live in normal environments. Bacteria is grouped based on their DNA. Archaea is grouped based on their RNA. Good job. So those are your big differences there that we should all know about. So as long as you guys know that there are 2 ways to classify organisms, Linnaean taxonomy chart is the older one that organizes it based on physical similarities. Cladogram is based on evolution or genetic similarities. And then you also should know that there are 6 kingdoms of life and there are 3 domains of life and how they are all different from each other as well. Okay. Well, thank you guys again for coming. If you have any other questions, you can type them in the chat box. But if not, you are free to go. And I hope you guys learned something today about classification, knowing how to do these 2 charts. That'll be your homework assignment from 601. You're going to organize 5 animals based on, you're going to use 2 different ways to organize them, the cladogram and the Linnaean taxonomy chart. So that's what you'll have for your assignment for 601. Well, thank you guys for coming, and we'll talk to you next time.